There are really a few reasons I want to talk about inflation, and I'm going to look as my core at the Consumer Price Index and headline versus core CPI, or Consumer Price Index. And number one, there's a difference between inflation for lower class versus higher class. It turns out most of the people obviously that watch these are small business owners, and they're usually spending money on discretionary things. As you look on the right-hand side here, you'll notice that some of the things that we spent more money on, they are the 12-month change and the weight in the Consumer Price Index is higher. Apparel being one that somebody with a small business or a six-figure income is going to spend far more, not twice as much, but 10 or 15 times as much, or 30 times as much on apparel. On medical care, so specifically wellness care, going to spend far more. Recreation, education, so forth. Obviously, they're going to spend far more money. They're much more concerted consumers. Now, the other thing that is important, besides looking at what things do you spend money on and what's the inflation, trend in each of those categories, is a more important number, and that is, what has this historical inflation rate been? The last 12 months, we're talking about a 1.7% inflation rate. And of course, I don't like the way that the government keeps the inflation numbers. If we look at core CPI down here at the bottom, 2.3, lately been low because energy has been a contributor, actually a deflationary force. And then investing globally in jobs and infrastructure and technology has also been a deflationary force. So, a company can take an employee and move them into China and cut their cost by 75%. So there are some deflationary forces out there. Of course, there's inflationary forces. There's the fact that the government's spending more money than it's making, which is a diluting effect. If you take orange juice and a glass of water and you pour them both into a pitcher, you're going to have some diluted orange juice. The dollar is having the same thing happen. But inflation and the weakening of the dollar are two separate issues. We can hedge against the weakening of the dollar. We can hedge against inflation. There are investments that do that. But more importantly, I like to look at the long-term average of inflation, 4.2%. In the last 100 years, we've only had 3 years where we didn't have inflation. And so as you look, we had deflation during the Great Depression. As you look going forward at how much money you're going to need in 10, 20, 30 years, at 4.2%, we're talking about cutting the dollar in half, and every 15, 16 years, the value of your dollar gets cut in half, which means we need rising income, we need rising assets. We have to be in investments and in businesses where the goose is laying a bigger golden egg, where income is increasing, or we're putting a portion of the money away to supplement future increased needs. We have to project what those needs are. Most people would project when they retire, they want to live off of 70% of what they're currently spending. Not what they're currently making, but what they're currently spending, which for some people is more than they're currently making. For some people, it's less than they're currently making. But that consumer price index, that inflation number, becomes very important when we're looking at what are we spending money on. Is it education? Which, yes, the last 12 months we see that education's only 2% increase, but we actually have seen projections where 7-8% annual increases over the next decade are more likely. As we look at energy costs, the last 12 months have been down. There's a lot of reasons for that. I'm not going to get into that in this video. There's other videos that explain that, but we anticipate that that's going to go up. We know the number of users and the amount of usage in India and in China are going to skyrocket over the next 10 years as we build the equivalent of 12 New York cities in China. We're going to see the consumption of energy go up. So as we look at some of these costs, we have to say, boy, inflation has been over the last 50 years 4%, but we're going to see it in some of these areas go up far faster than that. Medical care, unfortunately, this is looking to be something that the government is looking to solve, and that is always, with everything that's ever happened, been a more expensive solution. I hate to call it even a solution. That's an oxymoron. It's a misnomer, I should say. The reality is the medical care costs are probably going to skyrocket, particularly with the demand, with just simple fact of not just the lack of efficiency of who's administrating the medical care, but also by sheer demand. Demand pushes price up. When you have this many baby boomers, tens of million people, you have an aging population that needs more medical care, that lowers the supply, it increases demand, that pushes price up, as we learn in economics. So as you look at inflation, just consider, what are you going to be spending on? Make projections of what you're going to need, and let's make sure that we plan ahead of time so that we've got rising income, that we're putting money away so that we can harvest. When the harvest comes, it's there adjusted for inflation already.